On the 2nd of November, 2001, Disney quietly closed the gates on one of its own parks and never opened them again. The park was called River Country, and for 25 years it had been the place where families at Walt Disney World went to cool off. A make-believe old swimming hole of water slides and rope swings tucked against the shore of Bay Lake. It did not burn down. It was not wrecked by a storm. One autumn it simply did not reopen for the season, and then the next season came and it stayed shut, and the one after that, until the fences went up and the Florida heat and rain and green growth were left to do whatever they wanted to it. For the better part of 2 decades, a rotting water park sat behind a chain-link fence a few hundred yards from the most visited vacation resort on the planet. Its slides fading, its empty pools filling with algae and leaves, hidden in plain sight inside the happiest place on Earth. If you ever managed to get near it in those years, and a lot of people trespassed to try, what you found looked like a set from a film about the end of the world. The slides stood bleached and cracking. The pools held black water and fallen branches. Vines climbed the towers. Signs still promised fun that had ended before some of the trespassers were born. It became a strange kind of pilgrimage site, a piece of genuine decay inside a place engineered to never show decay at all. River Country is not the only thing Disney has abandoned. It is just the piece you can photograph. To understand what was abandoned, you have to understand what it was in the beginning. River Country opened in 1976, and it was Disney World's first water park, built in an era when the whole idea of the resort was different. Its theme was the old-fashioned swimming hole, the kind of muddy rope swing, cannonball off the rock place an American kid might have found at the edge of a small town in an earlier generation. It even used the natural water of Bay Lake mixed in with the pools, so that swimming there felt less like a sterile modern water park and more like a real lake with slides. It was, for its time, relatively simple, relatively cheap to enter, and it fit a version of Disney World that a middle-class family could reach without a spreadsheet. The centerpiece was a section of Bay Lake walled off and themed as a rustic swimming hole, with a sand bottom and lake water called Bay Cove, where you could swing out on a rope and drop in the way kids had done in rivers and quarries for generations. There were flume slides down a rocky hillside with names like Whoop and Holler Hollow, and an inner tube rapids ride called Whitewater Rapids, and a quiet nature trail through the cypress at the water's edge. None of it was enormous or high-tech. That was the charm. It felt handmade, a little rough, closer to a real lake than to the enormous engineered water parks Disney would build later. It was the kind of attraction that fit an afternoon and a modest budget. While writing this, I looked up what a single day at the Magic Kingdom now costs a family, and I sat there looking at the number for a while. We will come back to that number. It belongs at the end of this story, not the beginning. There was a companion to River Country, and its ending is even stranger. On an island out in that same lake, Disney ran a place called Discovery Island. It opened in 1974, first under a pirate theme as Treasure Island, and grew into a genuine, accredited zoological park set on an island reachable only by boat. It kept exotic birds and animals, ran breeding programs, and for a quarter of a century was a lush, quiet corner of the resort. When Discovery Island closed in 1999 and the animals were relocated to the new Animal Kingdom Park, the island was sealed off and left. Years later, an urban explorer who managed to reach it by swimming across the lake photographed what he found, and the images traveled far, buildings collapsing under vegetation, and, most unsettling of all, jars of preserved biological specimens still sitting on shelves inside an abandoned laboratory building, left behind when the zoo was cleared. An accredited zoo, part of the most controlled tourist environment on Earth, had been simply walked away from and left with its contents rotting in place. Disney tightened security after those images spread, which is its own kind of admission. The company took the name Discovery Island and reused it for the central hub of Animal Kingdom, so the words survive on every map, while the actual place they once named rots quietly off the shoreline, deleted from the story. No full accounting of what was left behind on that island has ever been made public, and Disney has never offered one. There is a third ruin, smaller, and it hid for years in the heart of the Magic Kingdom itself. The lagoon that once held a submarine ride based on 20,000 leagues under the sea closed in the mid-1990s, and for years afterward, the drained blue pool simply sat there, fenced, inside one of the busiest theme parks in the world, until it was finally filled in and built over. Even in a park where every square foot is supposedly precious, an attraction that stops earning its space can simply stop existing. 3 ruins, 1 resort. That is a pattern, and patterns have causes. That older Disney World made a promise, spoken or not, and the promise was accessibility. The pitch of the place had always been that this was magic for everyone. that an ordinary family that saved up could come and be treated for a few days as if the magic was theirs. River Country and Discovery Island belonged to that promise. They were the kind of gentle, low-key, included attractions that filled out a vacation without emptying a bank account. And for a while, that model held. Then, one by one, the company let those pieces go. River Country closed at the end of the 2001 season, and no one announced it was gone for good. It was simply closed for the season, the way it had been closed every off-season before. But it never reopened, and in 2005, after years of silence, Disney confirmed what everyone had by then guessed. River Country was finished. The reasons Disney gave were quiet and practical, and the real ones were quieter and more practical still. Attendance across the resort had dropped after the attacks of September 11, 2001, and a small, aging water park was an easy thing to leave shut in a lean year. But the deeper problem was the water. River Country's charm, the natural lake water, had become its liability. Florida's warm, fresh water can harbor a rare organism called Naegleria fowleri, an amoeba that, in extraordinarily rare cases, can cause a fatal brain infection in swimmers. Years earlier, in 1980, an 11-year-old boy had died after swimming at River Country, in a case linked to that amoeba. As health regulations around natural swimming water tightened over the decades, a park built on the idea of swimming in filtered lake water became something Disney no longer wanted to defend or expensively rebuild. So they fenced it off and walked away. And then, for 18 years, they did nothing at all. River Country did not sit abandoned for a year or two while plans were sorted out. It sat, fenced and rotting, for roughly 18 years. 18 years is long enough for a child who last swam there to grow up, finish school, and have children of their own. And for the whole time, one of the world's most image-conscious companies, a company that repaints and repaves and refreshes obsessively to keep every visible surface perfect, left a decaying ruin sitting inside its own resort. That is not an oversight. A company like Disney does not forget it owns a water park. It was a decision, renewed year after year, that the cost of dealing with the place, of either reviving it or clearing it, was not yet worth paying, and so it was left to the algae and the vines a little longer. Only when the land beneath it finally became valuable enough for something more profitable did the machines finally arrive. The ruin was not a failure of attention. It was the physical shape of a priority, and the priority was never the old, cheap, inclusive thing. Here is the lever this whole story turns on, and it is not a villain twirling a mustache. It is something colder and more ordinary than that. At Disney, as at any corporation, the balance sheet is sovereign, and it is sovereign even inside the magic. River Country was not left to rot because anyone hated it. It was left to rot because reopening it and defending its water and maintaining an old small park cost more than the park was expected to earn. Discovery Island was not closed out of cruelty. It was closed because the animals in the appeal could be consolidated into a giant new park that made more money. Every one of these decisions makes perfect sense on a page, and that is exactly the point. The magic is the product. The affection people feel is real, but to the company, it is an input, something to be managed and monetized and, when the numbers say so, quietly discontinued. The rotting slides of River Country are what corporate arithmetic looks like when it is left outdoors long enough to grow vines. River Country became something Disney almost certainly never intended, which was famous for being ruined. Through the 2000s and 2010s, as photographs and videos of the decaying park spread online, it developed a cult following among people who explore and document abandoned places. Here was a ruin with the one thing most ruins lack: instant emotional recognition. Everyone knew Disney. Everyone understood on sight the wrongness of a Disney park left to rot. The images spread precisely because they broke the spell, because the whole promise of Disney is that decay and disappointment are things that happen elsewhere, out in the ordinary world, never inside the berm. A cracked, algae-filled Disney water slide was proof that the magic had an off switch, and that the company was perfectly willing to flip it and walk away. Quick note before we carry on. I put together a field guide to 24 of these places, where they are, what happened to them, and whether you can still get in. Coordinates for every site and an honest note on the ones that are already gone. Scan the QR code on the right or the links in the description if you want it. Now back to it. And once you see that lever clearly, you start to see it working on far more than 3 closed attractions. Let me be clear about what this video is not saying. Walt Disney World is not a ghost town. It is not dying. Tens of millions of people still pour through its gates every year, and it remains one of the most visited and most profitable resorts in the world. The abandonment did not stop the crowds. It moved somewhere harder to photograph. The affordable, spontaneous Disney trip, the one River Country belonged to, has itself been quietly abandoned. Not with a fence, but with a price tag. For most of its history, Walt Disney World was built around the idea of showing up. You bought a ticket, you walked in, and the systems inside, even the good ones, were included. When Disney introduced a way to reserve a spot in line for the most popular rides, a system called FastPass, it was free. It came with your ticket. Over the last several years, that changed completely. The free system was retired and replaced with paid ones, where skipping the longest lines now costs extra money, sometimes a great deal of it, on top of a ticket that itself has climbed relentlessly. The parks introduced a reservation requirement, so that for the first time, a valid ticket did not guarantee you could even enter on the day you wanted. More and more of the day was carved into upcharges, premium tiers, and add-ons, from parking to dining to the ability to simply move through the park more quickly. Piece by piece, the experience was unbundled, and each piece given a price. To see how thoroughly the Show Up and Wander day has been replaced, look at the machinery a modern visit now requires. Where once you bought a paper ticket and walked through a turnstile, a trip today is mediated by an app on your phone, and for many guests, a wristband linked to your account, through which you book your park day, your ride reservations, your dining, and your purchases. Ticket prices are no longer a single flat number, but shift by the day through dynamic pricing, so that the busiest, most desirable days cost the most, the way an airline prices seats. The ability to skip the longest lines, once free, is now sold, sometimes ride by ride. None of this is presented as a takeaway. It is all presented as convenience, as personalization, as magic made smarter. But the cumulative effect is a vacation that rewards those who can pay for the premium tiers and plan with military precision, and quietly penalizes the family that just wanted to show up and wander, which was once the entire idea. The technology did not make the magic more accessible, it made it more finely metered. To feel how far that is from the original idea, you have to go back to the man whose name is on the gate. When Walt Disney imagined his parks, the pitch, whatever you think of the man, was mass welcome, a clean, affordable, almost civic kind of entertainment that ordinary American families could reach. Disney died in 1966, years before Walt Disney World opened, and the company that carried his name forward became something he was not, a large, publicly traded corporation answerable, above all, to its shareholders. That is not a scandal, it is simply what the company is, but it changes the arithmetic of every decision. A shareholder-driven company is obligated to chase the most profitable version of itself, and over decades, the most profitable version of Disney World turned out to be one that extracts more from fewer, wealthier guests rather than less from a broad, ordinary crowd. The founding promise of accessibility was not betrayed in a single dramatic moment. It was optimized away, quarter by quarter, in the same unremarkable manner that left a water park to rot. Consider the shape of the change, not the exact figures, which keep climbing anyway. A single day at the Magic Kingdom, which in the resort's early years cost a working family only a few dollars a head, now runs well over $100 per person before you have bought a single meal, a single souvenir, a single line skip, or a night in a hotel. That is the number I sat looking at. A full family trip that once fit into a normal household summer budget has become, for many people, a once-in-a-childhood expense that has to be saved for over years and planned like a military campaign, complete with apps, reservation windows, and strategy guides. The trip did not just get more expensive, it got more anxious, because so much of it now depends on paying correctly and planning perfectly. The spontaneous Show Up and Wander Disney Day that River Country belonged to has, in a real sense, been discontinued, and not because anyone could no longer build it, but because a different model made more money. None of that is a fence with a padlock, but it is the same act. It is the abandonment of the promise that this was magic for everyone. The company did not stop selling magic. It changed who the magic was really for, tilting the whole machine toward extracting the most possible money from each guest rather than welcoming the most possible guests. And people feel that. They cannot always name it, so it comes out as a vague grief, a sense that the place has gotten greedy, that the warmth has cooled, that going to Disney World now feels less like being welcomed and more like being processed. That grief is not imaginary. It is the felt version of a real shift, the same shift that left a water park to rot rather than spend money keeping a cheaper era alive. And this is the quiet engine under the loud complaints, the reason that grief is not just nostalgia talking. Nostalgia remembers things as better than they were. What these people are describing is different and more specific. They are describing a real shift in who the place is built to serve, from the broad middle that Walt's original pitch courted to the higher spending guest a modern entertainment corporation prefers. The abandoned water park rotting in the woods and the app that now gates the entrance are two ends of the same decision. The cheap, inclusive pieces were allowed to decay or were priced out of reach, and the expensive, exclusive pieces were polished and expanded. When people say the magic feels different, they are noticing correctly that the magic has been re-aimed, and that some of them are no longer standing where it is pointed. The most perfect image in this entire story came in 2019. After 18 years of letting River Country decay behind its fence, Disney finally sent in the machines and demolished what was left of it. The cracked slides, the empty pools, the bleached towers that urban explorers had made quietly famous. They did not clear the land to give something back to ordinary guests. They cleared it to build a new deluxe vacation resort on the site, a higher-priced place for a higher-paying customer. Think about the shape of that. The affordable old swimming hole rots for 18 years, and when it is finally cleared away, what rises in its place is an upscale hotel. That single sequence, the cheap thing left to die and the expensive thing built on its bones, is the entire argument of this video expressed in dirt and concrete. River Country and Discovery Island are the most complete ruins, but they are not the only things Disney has quietly abandoned, and the pattern is what matters. The history of the resort is also a history of beloved attractions paved over, filled in, or gutted the moment a more profitable use appeared. Rides that generations of children grew up on have vanished with little ceremony, their buildings reskinned for new properties, their theming stripped out overnight. To the guest, each closure feels like a small bereavement, the loss of a specific memory anchored to a specific place. To the company, each is a routine reallocation of square footage toward whatever the current numbers favor. This is why longtime visitors so often describe a slow, hard-to-name sadness about the place, even as it grows and gleams. They are watching their own memories get overwritten in real time, and being told, gently, that the overwriting is an upgrade. So what do you actually do with this? Disney World is not going to collapse. Millions of people will keep going, and many of them will have a wonderful time, because the company is extraordinarily good at what it does. The point is not that Disney World is bad. The point is what its ruins teach, which is a lesson about every institution that sells you warmth and belonging as a product. Every institution that sells belonging, whether it is a theme park, a brand, a team, or a hometown employer, offers you the same implicit bargain. It invites you to love it, to build memories around it, to fold it into your family's story. And that love is real on your side, but you are not in a relationship with a place that loves you back. You are in a relationship with an arrangement that will return your affection precisely as long as your affection pays, and that will fence off, demolish, or price out anything that stops paying, including, eventually, the very things that made you love it in the first place. Stand back and look at the geography of it now. Out on Bay Lake, the island that was once a working zoo sits silent and overgrown, its old paths lost under the canopy, patrolled against the curious, unmarked on the maps handed to guests, its full contents still unaccounted for. On the shore, where the old swimming hole rotted for 18 years, the ground has been cleared for a new deluxe resort aimed at guests willing to pay premium rates to stay inside the bubble. Between those 2 points move tens of millions of visitors a year, most of them happy, most of them with no idea that they are vacationing on top of Disney's own ruins. That is the real texture of the place. Not a ghost town, not a collapse, but a thriving, expensive, carefully maintained present built directly over an abandoned past, with the fences and the demolition crews doing the work of making sure the two never quite meet in a guest's line of sight. So that is the truest answer to the question in the title. It is not that nobody wants to visit Disney World anymore. Plenty of people still do, and they are not wrong to. It is that the Disney World many of them actually miss, the affordable, unhurried, magic for everyone version, was closed for the season one autumn, quietly, and never reopened, and left to grow over while the fences stayed up and the prices went on climbing. The magic is not gone. It has simply been sorted, the profitable kept polished, and the unprofitable left to the vines. And the ruins in the woods are just the part they forgot to hide. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button in the middle to watch more forgotten places and abandoned history from across America. Then click the video on the left to watch similar stories like this. Or if you really want to get stuck in, click the playlist on the right. New videos every week. I'll see you in the next one.